tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So the Buddha is, with his great compassion, saw how we are bound up, caught up, tied up in knots, entangled internally and externally in our story of who we are, of how it feels to be this one, and in our relationships with each other and with the world. There's entanglement upon entanglement. And he saw the potential, he not just saw it, he was living it, living the potential of being free of that. And the Buddha's teaching covers such a wide variety of levels. So from the very basic to very, very subtle teachings. And what I've found is that even the very simple and basic teachings have layer upon layer of meaning. So in the beginning we might hear something and it's like, oh yeah. Then we work at that and then we find the fruits of that. We experience the results of it. And then maybe much later on in our practice, we understand it differently, more deeply. Even around things like mindfulness, sati. In the beginning it has we have one understanding and we're like, I've got it. And then much later in our practice we might find, there's this whole other aspect to sati. And then now I've got it. And then later again we might experience another subtlety. And this is one of the beauties of the teaching. I think of it like a spiral learning. We keep coming back to the same place, but with greater understanding and greater depth of understanding. So the Metta theme has been here this morning with the chant and the guided meditation practice together. And in the practice of Metta, many people, there's a lot of people don't like it. It brings up aversion for some people. And because maybe there's a sense of can't do it. No. So the quality of metta itself can work on that. It can bring metta to that no. It can work on the knots and the solidity of who and what we think ourselves to be. Because the solidity of who and what we think ourselves to be, it comes from thinking. It comes from thoughts. So how we use our mind really, really matters. Our thinking mind and also our heart mind. So the Buddha is pointing to the fact that we are not our thoughts. We are not our body. We are not our feelings, feeling tones. We are not our perceptions. We are not even our sense experience. It's kind of hard to grok that. Because it feels like, well, what if we're not any of those things, then what are we? We've got to be something among those, at least one or two of them. And he's not denying them. He's not saying they're not real, they don't exist. But he's saying, this is not who and what you are. Don't hold on to these transient things, thinking this is who I am. Or thinking, if I get this, or become this kind of person, if I just get that promotion, or if I just get that really good opportunity, then things will be good. Then I'll be who I really am, or I'll come to that place of yes, of settling. So that place of settling and well-being that we all look for in different ways, the Buddha was also pointing to. But he's pointing in a very different direction. So he's not pointing to being somebody really impressive, or having a great resume, or having a wonderful, lots of material wealth, or being brilliant. He's not really pointing to any of those things as the place of happiness and peace and well-being. And some people have those things, some people don't. Some people want them, some people are not interested. But he's pointing to a place of presence where we meet what is here and now. And in the beginning of our practice, presence isn't always very nice. So we turn towards what's here and now, and ouch, lots of difficult stuff that needs to be sorted through and tidied up and released. And that can go on for years, on and off. And maybe there's also, through the practice of meditation, particularly, and ethics and meditation, we can also touch into some potentiality, moments where everything just stops, where there's clarity, peacefulness, brightness. And then the old karma starts playing out again, and we're back in that small, tight experience of being somebody. Being somebody we like being or we don't like being. Generally being somebody, the feeling of being somebody is kind of uncomfortable. So the Buddha is trying to point us to how we can let go, how we can loosen and undo those knots. The history, our history, the tendencies of our heart and mind. So how we can transform them. And this is for everybody. This is a teaching for everyone who's interested, everyone, for those with little dust in their eyes, everyone who has an interest, a curiosity, a yearning maybe to free themselves from this small, limited experience of I am, me, mine. So the practice of metta, if we really use it as a practice, we don't have to start with loving all beings, because we probably can't do that. Or maybe we can love all beings except for this one. So that is not all beings. That's missing a very important one. So the way I see it is that first we need to start the work here in our own heart, in our own mind, our own body, the work of transformation. Bringing in the qualities of kindness and also of boundlessness. So the quality of metta, all the Brahma Viharas are also boundless. And this is a quality of mind. It's a natural quality of the mind, of the citta. Boundlessness. It's not what we live from most of the time, but it's accessible. It's real. It's here. It's accessible. So the metta practice is not just about being a nice person, being kind to everyone, not having thoughts of ill will. It helps with that. It certainly is an important part of it, not having thoughts of ill will. It can transform those thoughts. But it's also about touching into a bigger potential that we have, that isn't just this personality. And it transforms the way we experience the world, and also it transforms our own patterns. It loosens the knots, this quality of metta. And as we cultivate that, and in a way that is embodied, present, vibrant, radiating, interrelated, so it's radiating for all beings. And then we can even go beyond beings and just let it radiate. Just let it radiate in all directions, down into the earth, out into the cosmos, out into every direction. Learning to release the mind from its limited, bound, forgetful state. So as we do that, we start to... so that those experiences of spaciousness and boundlessness, they support the undoing of the holding and the knots and the wanting and the not wanting. And as we experience a greater perception of reality, the small, tight story isn't so believable. It loses its power. And then gradually, so this is a support for, it leads towards liberation. It's not, the practice of metta can't lead to final nibbana, but it leads us in the right direction. It can lead us to unbinding, to a vaster and more boundless experience of reality. So in a way it kind of pushes past all of the blocks and the limits and the knots. And there are many quite simple aspects of the Buddha's teaching that we maybe are already employing in our practice, like sila, like ethics, that also support this unbinding. So, the first precept on not taking life, obviously on its very basic level, don't kill other. You can even, Ajahn Chah would even sometimes say, don't kill other people. If he was working with fisher people, it's like, hey, just don't kill other people. So there's a very coarse level, and then when you take it to a very refined level, there's this sense of life is arising like this. And, the Buddha's pointing to the selflessness, the anatta of what we take to be me and mine is not me and mine. So you could say life is arising in these different ways right now. Life is Ajahn Koveloing and Ajahn Nisaboing. Life is Alexing and Kating. Life is arising in these different ways. And so, we are all part of this same process, this same arising in our unique and individual ways. And, there's many ways that the Buddha points to this, like the elements, the four simple elements. They're interchanging all the time with everything on this earth and actually in this universe. So there's this constant exchange of elements going on. And then I think, oh, this is me. This is mine. These are my four elements here. This is my earth, water, fire, and air here. No, it's constantly changing. We're part of each other in that way. So for one arising of life to take another arising of life makes no sense, because we're all part of the same arising. And as we understand and purify and transform this individual process here, the ethics and the understandings as the kilesas or the obscurations of mind of heart and mind get purified gradually through the practice, it's not all about me anymore, what I can get, what I can be, what I can show, but and yet it remains unique. So the arahants were very individual characters. So we remain unique, but without that self-orientation. So we can, we start wherever we are. We might be starting, it might be keeping the 5 precepts is our highest practice. That's a really precious practice, and it might be that it takes a lot of effort to keep those 5 precepts, and that's perfect. And it might be that those feel really established, and we're just comfortable with those, and we're really working at transforming ill will in our heart, because it just keeps coming up. And if that person was just not there or different, then I wouldn't feel this, but it's all their fault. And it's like, well, no, it isn't all their fault. The ill will is in the heart. So how to transform that ill will? Or greed, whatever it may be, confusion. So the work is to know where we are, start from where we are, know where we are, and to really meet the edge of that. So if the practice is very comfortable, we probably want to up the ante a little bit. Where are the places of stuckness? Where do I get triggered? Where are the knots? And to meet them, and bringing in all of the goodness of your practice already. So not forgetting to look at where you have already cultivated, and also the friendship. Good friends, spiritual companions is so important. People who've gone further than you have gone, or who are working with the same staff and want to encourage you along the way. So this is all a support for the practice. And I feel like here, these conditions are amazing. They are so good. We have really amazing, frequent teachings from the Ajahns here, and this vibrant community, and good enough, requisites, like enough, hopefully everyone's got enough food, water, medicine. Medicine can be a bit challenging sometimes, accommodation and clothing, hopefully you've got the basics good enough. And then finding the time, so everyone has this time, you've spent this time to be here, finding the time to take care of the path. The conditions are really good, and the opportunity is rare. And if this is the first Sangha you've ever been at, you might think, oh yeah, this is just like how it is. And I think this is quite a unique community, actually. And the quality is very high here. So don't waste this opportunity. Don't just come for entertainment. This is a precious opportunity. The Buddha says there is no discernible beginning to samsara. So samsara is the endless wheel of becoming. Never ends. There's no discernible beginning, and it goes on. And the Dhamma is showing us that we can get off that wheel. We can get onto the Dhamma wheel. And the Dhamma wheel leads us to Nibbana, to freedom, to liberation. And this is a genuine possibility. This is real. This isn't just people back in the Buddha's time when the Buddha was there. This is a genuine possibility that we can all support each other in, work towards. And we do it by meeting what's here And we do the work little by little, being inspired by things, working through the really difficult things, going through challenging times with maybe having a friend to lean on, or maybe not. We still can get through them. Going through kind of wonderful experiences, illuminating, insightful experiences, and then keeping on going. Don't just have some wonderful experience and think you got there. You're done. No, keep going until full liberation. It is. This is what the Buddha was pointing to. It is possible. Maybe we should have a race to the finish line. And there are also in the suttas mentions of some of the disciples of the Buddha who had made pacts in past lives, to support each other. They'd be seeking for enlightenment, and then, okay, well, if you get there first, let me know, and you can help me along. And so maybe that's something we could all do. Maybe not everyone, all of us together, but choose someone, or there may be somebody in the room. Maybe these two monks have already done that long ago. Support each other to enlightenment, So just a sense of like someone who's always going to be encouraging you in the right direction. So I offer that today, and I'd like to open up the floor for any questions or.
Han tamayang tamakataya sadhu karang katamase sadhu 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 anumodhami.
That was easy.
Thank you for being here, Venerables. It's such a blessing. My question is it the personality that abides in ill will? Or is that Mara, or are they one and the same?
Great question, yeah. Well, what is the personality? The sense of self is a contraction. The sense of self is, it's that which is not liberated. So ill will is part of the sense of self, and definitely Mara. So Mara, for anyone who doesn't know what Mara is, in the suttas, you have the Buddha, and you have various kind of deities, and then you have Mara, who is actually a deity, who is the one who's always trying to pull you off track. So the one who's always telling you to do the things that will keep you stuck. So you could say, yes, Mara and ill will, Mara and ill will are like that. And whether ill will is Mara or Mara is ill will, maybe we don't need to get into that. But definitely, if there's ill will arising in the heart's contracted, it's othering, it's me and them, and so it's delusion. And Mara is the king of delusion, revels in delusion. And then the personality, I guess that's, probably in the suttas, the Buddha doesn't even really exactly use that word personality. We have translated some things as personality that he doesn't really use that word, as far as I know. Personalities. Sakkaya Ditthi would be more like the body, isn't it? So maybe that's a more modern psychological, or not very psychological way of seeing things. But anyway, ill will is a contraction, the sense of self and other, and it's kind of the opposite direction to liberation.
People can ask questions on Zoom as well.
Thank you, Ayya, so much. I'm familiar with the obstacles to metta. I remember reading your that analogy of your experience of that contracted, leathery little heart from so long ago, and that no that arose so much in me. I worked on, But I'm interested in your experiences and observations of what yes is like. So teach us more about the yes to metta, please.
Yeah, the yes is... So I guess it depends where you're starting from, but for me personally, the first yes was... It's just recognizing there's a need to transform if the heart's very contracted like that. The first thing was like, I need some help. So there's a yes there. And then being given that teaching on metta and realizing the heart can't do it. So take it in, breathe it in, let it bathe the heart that can't produce metta. So I guess I had an experience before I started meditating of unconditional love as a phenomena. And so there was a sense of, it's here, it's a quality. And then the separate sense of self blocks it. So there's the belief in a separate somebody, the personality, the me, blocks, that thought was blocking that unconditional love from permeating the heart, the mind. So I guess because I sort of saw that before, there was a recognition like, okay, well I can't generate it, but I can take it in. And so then taking it in until the heart is well and has a sense of well-being. And then it's just a lovely, lovely thing to do, to share that for all beings. There's nothing more wonderful. I mean, there are more wonderful things, but not many, than sharing that for all beings. It's just, that's the yes too. It's just like, it's a beautiful thing to do. And then as you keep doing that, and at first it is a doing, as you keep doing that, you experience it's very, very beautiful for oneself, and it's beneficial for others. And then gradually the heart-mind just gets, you experience the limitless nature of the mind, of the citta. And it's the yes is in some ways it gets more and more present and centered and just here. And at some point you don't need to be anyone doing anything, it'll just be happening. Yeah. With some cultivation. Yeah.
Vandana? Is that what you say? Vandana, please.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ayya, so nice to see you and hear you. You're such a well-rounded. I would say like your talk was such well-rounded. Appreciate it so much. One thing which I you mentioned about we all are on the different stage on our path, and we all should help each other. This is wonderful. And also, I appreciate when you talked about the elements and how we are part of the elements and we are in this constant exchange with our surroundings, right? This is such wonderful in a practical level. Like I see myself, if the tree doesn't exist, I won't be here, this body won't be here, because they will give me something which I am going to survive with, and I will give them something they will survive with. And question I want to ask you, when you say, just see life arising, can you also please complete it with life passing also at the same time, right? Arising, passing. So can you please elaborate? I love your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And actually the Buddha points much more to the passing because of the cessation. Yeah, life is arising and passing away. I mean, jiva, in terms of life is arising and passing away. Everything is arising and passing away at every moment. And actually how we look at that, how we put our attention on the arising and passing away of things influences what we experience. So maybe, for many people, maybe the arising part is really accessible and fun and like, yay, and so then to really pay attention to the cessation of things, it makes a balance. Because everything that has a beginning goes through a process and has an end. And maybe my leaning is a little bit more towards the ending of things naturally. So I perhaps put more emphasis on the arising because to find a healthy balance, yeah. But definitely, the Buddha's pointing to guiding us actually to be aware of the ending of things, and ultimately the cessation, the ultimate cessation of any kind of grasping, which is nibbana, which is liberation. So, thank you for bringing that in, very important.
Can I say one thing about the yes?
Yeah.
There's a quote from Ayya Anandabodhī that I've memorized. It's simple, but it's beautiful, that letting go is letting be. And I was thinking, like, what's the word for yes in Pali? And it's evang, evang. And that also means thus. Like when every sutta starts with evang me sutang, thus I have heard. So the sense of like acceptance, like when we say yes to each other, we say evang, evang. So like thus, yes, it's like this is the ground.
I'm new at this, but and I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, but it seems to me right now there's a lot of evil in the world and feeling helpless in light of that, and I'm wondering how Buddhism looks at that.
Thanks, Vic. Yeah, the evil in the world. It's there always has been. There always has been. We hear a lot about it now, and on a global level, let's say, and also it's tricky, because who is thinking who is evil? Because these people think those people are evil, and those people think these people are evil, and so so the Buddha was warning us to not feed evil, to not strengthen evil, but mostly he was pointing to us to cultivate the good. So if we look out on the world and think, oh, everyone's evil, it's also evil, there's a lot of corruption in the world. There always has been, actually. And I think what's playing out here in the US at the moment is a very old story that's been played out many, many times in many countries by many people. And it's kind of how the world works. So the Buddha is kind of pointing to samsara, which I mentioned before, this endless cycle of becoming. It keeps on, it's endless because of greed, because of aversion, hatred, and delusion. Those are the three forces that keep it turning, keep it turning, keep it turning. And so, there are times when when those forces are stronger, and there are times when they're weaker on a level of a country or on a global level. And the Buddha isn't trying to get us to fix the world, but to be part of the cultivation of the good and also of understanding the nature of things. So it's important to, if somebody's in danger, to do what one can to protect them. And if somebody needs help, to do what one can to help. And we're limited in this world. We can only do so much on a worldly level. And I think it's very important that people do, there's many levels that people do good in the world. And I think it's very, very important, each of those levels. There's many, many things that people do. Each of them is important, and then there's kind of what the monastics hold in a way is the stepping out of the whole crazy mess of it all into, and I don't mean in an avoidant way, but just recognizing this is beginningless and endless. This has been going on forever, and how can we bring, and in our own lives, the qualities of clarity, kindness, understanding, patience, these qualities, and how can we encourage them in others? Because basically those three forces of greed, hatred, and delusion are the problem. And so to, in a nutshell, the nutshell of the Buddha's teachings, to refrain from doing harm oneself, to do good, to find ways of doing good in the world in whichever way you can, and to purify the mind, purify the heart, and that's the meditation practice and the practice of, so it's like ethics and doing good, and then in the meditation we find a stillness that isn't pushed and pulled around by the world. And that's not an avoidant place, but it's a place of clarity And it's really what needs to be strengthened. Yeah. So did I answer your question? Okay.
One more.
Thank you. So can you talk about straddling self and non-self? There are people that say you have to find yourself before you can let go of the self. I can get to a place of grokking and understanding the non-self and even feel it, and then I just slam right back into the self. And then there's the conventional day-to-day where we have to navigate the self. But how do we stay more on the path of anatta?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a way of perceiving. So we're not trying to get rid of anything. I mean, we're trying to get rid of our unwholesome tendencies, but we're not trying to not be somebody. There are times in our meditation practice where the sense of self falls away, and that's really nice, And there are times also maybe we're in nature, or maybe you might find listening to music where the sense of self falls away, and that's so lovely. It's such a relief. And then then somebody calls you, or you got to go to work, or whatever is happening, and then the sense of self arises again, and it's smaller. It's a smaller experience, and so. Andy Olensky, who's a translator of Pali and suttas and Sanskrit, he points to he says there's no word, I think, anyway, you might know this, if this is true or not, but that there's no word for process in Pali, strangely enough. And he said if there was a word for process in Pali, then maybe that word for not self would be process rather than anatta, because that atta, anatta, that self, not self, paradigm makes a lot of sense in ancient India, and then these days it can be a little bit confusing. So what he's pointing to is, if you think about the body, so as I was mentioning about the elements, for example, that's a process. So we drank some water, and then that water that was once part of the river or the rain is now in this body, it's part of this body, and then it's going to go back into the sewage system and go through its process. So that's going on. There's a process here in terms of the four elements, and in terms of everything. So this whole experience of being me is a process. So that's kind of one way that the Buddha is pointing to. It's a process, it's ever-changing. None of these things are permanent that we take to be me and mine. And because they're not permanent, let them go. Let them go. So one of the ways I find helpful to reflect on is that this body is nature. It's nature unfolding. And we have different natures. Some individuals are very, very energetic, some are more kind of laid back, and some are super intelligent, some are more intuitive. We're all kind of different. But it's nature unfolding. So we still use so there's still some directing of our body, speech and mind. We're clear about it, we're discerning about what we do with our body, speech and mind, but we kind of do it and then we're doing and then letting go, and doing and then letting go. And then just noticing when the contraction of self happens, and getting curious around that and says, okay, is that phone call, or is that situation at work, and how do I bring the practice into this? How would it be to not follow the old patterns? So it does come back to what I was saying about the patterns and the solidifying, and using things like metta or right speech or whatever it is, where we're changing what we take ourselves to be normally. We're doing it differently, and then that transforms. So it's a sort of a softening of the grip of me and mine, an allowing of the process.